The Arizona sun was cruel that year, burning the land, breaking men's spirits. But one poor rancher still held on, not to wealth, not to pride, but to something far greater. Across the valley lived an arrogant, rich widow, proud as a queen, her heart locked behind her wealth. Until the day fate crossed their paths, when her little girl fell ill, no doctor could save her. No gold could buy time. And that's when the man she once called poor made a choice that would change all their lives forever. Tell us where you're watching from, and join our Sleep West family as we ride into the story of a man who refused to let go.
The Arizona sun, relentless and unforgiving, beat down on the Sulphur Springs Valley in the year 1885. The dust was fine, the kind that got into your teeth and settled on your soul. On one side of the Alkali Flat lay the Bartee Ranch, a sprawl of well-maintained adobe and rough-hewn corrals, owned by Emma Thorne. She was a woman cut from flint, a beautiful widow with an air of frigid superiority, a shield she'd forged after the loss of her wealthy, well-connected husband. Her wealth was vast, and her disdain for anything less than perfection was sharper than a new branding iron. Her 9-year-old daughter, Lily, was the one soft spot in her hardened existence, a bright-eyed child who often looked lost in the shadow of the Bartee's grandeur. Opposite, a stark, almost insolent contrast, was the meager spread of Ben Cartwright. His single-room shack, patched and weathered, sat on a small patch of land like a stubborn weed. Ben was 35, his face lined less by years and more by worry. He was poor. His wife had bolted 3 years ago, claiming she wasn't built for scrub grass and starvation. Yet Ben possessed a decency, an inner fire that shone through his threadbare clothes. He worked his land with a quiet ferocity, was always polite, and if a neighbor needed a hand, Ben was there, no questions asked. Emma saw Ben's place every morning, a blot on her perfect horizon, an irritating reminder of the poverty she had successfully outrun. She was certain his smallness was contagious. The price of humanity. The tension between the two ran as hot and dry as the Arizona wind. Emma was known to send her foreman to remind Ben that stray cattle were not welcome on Bartee land. A message Ben always received with a courteous nod that seemed to infuriate her more than any protest. One blistering afternoon, disaster struck a wagon carrying supplies from town to the Bartee. The axle snapped clean. The driver, an older hand named Jed, a man who had known Ben's father, trudged across the dust to the tiny ranch. "Ben," Jed called, hat in hand, a tremor of shame in his voice. The mistress's big wagon's busted, a clean break on the axle. No one else for miles with a forge that's worth a hoot. She said to ask for your help. Ben didn't hesitate. He wiped his hands on his denim trousers, grabbed his tools and walked the distance back with Jed. He worked for a solid hour in the punishing sun. His muscles corded and glistening, his movements precise and practiced. He hammered, he filed, he set the iron right, a blacksmith's touch evident in the clean, sturdy repair. When he finished, Emma herself rode up on her prized bay mare, the girl, Lily, perched behind her, watching Ben with wide, curious eyes. Emma dismounted, her riding habit immaculate, her expression one of cold calculation. "You are finished, I see," she stated, not asked. She reached into the saddlebag and pulled out a small leather pouch. "Here for your labor." Ben wiped his brow with the back of his hand, his eyes meeting hers, a startling, clear, honest blue. "No, ma'am," he said, shaking his head gently. "I'm obliged, but I'll not take pay for a bit of neighborly help." It was a matter of humanity, not money. Emma's beautiful hard face twisted with distaste. She took a deliberate step back, as if his words carried the scent of his poverty. "I don't take favors from poor people," she spat, her voice low and cutting, laced with an arrogance that Ben had never heard so plainly spoken. She threw the pouch of coins into the dust near his feet, then turned her back before the metallic clatter had even settled. The words didn't sting, they were a physical blow. Ben felt the air rush out of him, a terrible, dizzying moment of recognition. She doesn't see a man, she sees a thing. He stood there, silent, his hands clenched, the iron of the forge no hotter than the shame suddenly burning in his gut. He didn't bend to pick up the coins. He just turned, walked back to his meager homestead, and let the sun bake the moisture and the malice out of the ground where the pouch lay. That night, Ben couldn't sleep. Her rejection had not been of him, Ben Cartwright, but of his very state of being. It was a truth that settled deep and bitter. He looked at the vast star-scattered Arizona sky and felt utterly, hopelessly alone. The fading light, the seasons turned, but the frost between the bar tea and the small ranch remained. Ben continued his life of hard work and stoic silence, now haunted by Emma's cruel assessment. Emma, for her part, tried to forget the rancher who refused to act the role of the beggar, but the empty space across the field, and the sight of her repaired wagon, was a constant irritant. But fate, as it often does in the arid wastes, had a different plan. 2 days before a major territorial holiday, Lily, Emma's daughter, was taken ill with a fever. It started as a small dismissible thing, but by the evening of the holiday, the child was burning. Emma's staff, all of them looking forward to their rare day off, had dispersed to visit family in town. The bar tea, usually bustling, was a tomb of silence. By midday, Lily's illness had turned severe. Her breath was shallow, her face pale beneath a sheen of sweat. Emma, pacing like a trapped animal, tried every remedy she knew, but the child worsened. The girl began to whisper incoherently, and then, terrifyingly, she fainted. Emma, the strong, controlled woman, was suddenly just a mother facing the abyss. She shrieked for her servants, but only the echoing emptiness of the ranch answered. The town, miles away, felt 1,000 leagues distant. Panic, raw and debilitating, seized her. She looked out her parlor window, past her manicured yard, across the hot, shimmering land, and saw the tiny, insignificant shack. Her last, desperate hope. She ran. She ran through the tall grass, her skirt catching on thorns, her elegant shoes kicking up dust. A desperate, wild creature stripped of her arrogance. She ran to the man she had scorned, the poor man whose help she'd refused to accept. Ben was at his forge, doing a small repair, when he saw her. He had never seen her without her armor. Her hair was loose, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She looked as broken as the cart axle he had fixed. "Ben!" she cried, her voice a raw, desperate thing. "Lily, she's very ill. Help me. I'll pay you, Ben. I'll pay anything." Ben didn't need the money. He didn't even hear the offer. He saw the terror in her eyes, a reflection of the same primal fear any man feels for his own. He didn't speak a single word. He ran past her. He burst into the bar tea house, a place he had never set foot in, and saw the girl small and still on the great mahogany bed. His heart clenched. Without hesitation, he scooped her up. She was feather-light, and carried her gently. He threw her into his own wagon, a beat-up conveyance of necessity, not luxury. He lashed the reins, the horses flying down the rutted road to the nearest clinic in town. Emma, huddled next to her daughter, gripped the side of the wagon, the speed in Ben's ferocious urgency, a dizzying blur. The cost of a life at the small, overworked doctor's office. The diagnosis was grim. "It's a nasty, fast-moving lung sickness," the doctor stated, his face weary. "She needs specific medications, the newest kind from back east, and round-the-clock care. It's expensive, Mrs. Thorne. The treatment will cost a big amount." Emma stood there, her composure utterly gone. "I don't have that kind of ready money here, not right now, and the banks are closed for the holiday." She felt the sting of her supposed wealth being useless, a beautiful, empty shell. It was Ben who stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the little girl's fragile form. He stood between the frantic mother and the tired doctor. "You start the treatment, Doc," Ben said, his voice quiet but firm, a sound of unshakable resolve. "You start the medications you have. I'll be back in the morning with the rest of what you need, the medicines and the money." Emma watched him, a silent scream of disbelief in her throat. She, the proud owner of the bar tea, was being saved by the man she'd called poor. Ben left them there, and rode his weary horse straight back toward the rising moon. He didn't go to his forge. He went to the one place he knew could give him the total sum, the land agent's office. He found the agent at his home, dragged him out of his holiday slumber, and signed the papers with a steady hand. He sold his ranch, his home, his entire future. He took the small, hard-won stack of bills and rode back into the night, the weight of his sacrifice both crushing and strangely lifting. He got to the town just as the sun was painting the sky orange. He secured the specialized medicines, paid the doctor the required amount, and only then, exhausted but resolute, returned to the clinic. A glimpse of the man. A week passed, a week of worry, of slow progress, and then, finally, recovery. Lily was fragile but awake, her laughter returning, a small triumphant sound. When the doctor cleared Lily to return home, Ben drove them back to the Bar T and the Bar T wagon, which he had silently retrieved. Emma was dressed simply now, her arrogance replaced by a profound, exhausted gratitude she couldn't yet articulate. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the Grand Bar T house. Lily, wrapped in a blanket, was snuggled against her mother. Ben dismounted. He looked at the girl, a small, genuine smile gracing his lips. "You be a good little hand now, Lily," he said softly. Then he turned to leave. Emma sat motionless. She opened her mouth, the words of thanks, of debt, forming on her tongue. "Ben," she started. He simply gave her a curt, polite nod, the same polite nod she'd always found so infuriating, but which now seemed to be a towering wall of formality. He didn't meet her eyes, and he walked away. He walked back toward his own little shack. She watched him go, feeling a crushing weight of humiliation and awe. The poor man she had insulted had just paid for her daughter's life with everything he owned, and he was walking away as if he had simply fetched her a bucket of water. A few hours later, the Bar T foreman returned. He was sweeping the porch when Emma found him. "Where is Ben Cartwright?" she asked, her voice uneven. The foreman frowned, wiping his mustache. "Why, the poor devil sold his little spread, ma'am. Closed the deal this morning. He's back over there now, just clearing his meager belongings. But he'll be gone before sundown. Said he was heading far, up toward the mountains. Wouldn't even let the buyer wait until tomorrow. Said it was urgent. You won't have that scrub rancher to bother you now, ma'am." The air left Emma's lungs. The urgency, the money, the sudden absolute finality of his departure. It struck her with the force of a thunderbolt. He hadn't had the money. He had sold his life to save Lily's. She didn't change her clothes. She just ran. She stumbled across the barren ground, the dust swallowing her footsteps, heading toward the man whose future she had unknowingly destroyed. She found Ben Cartwright by his shed, tossing his few belongings into a canvas sack. His horse was saddled. He was leaving forever. He saw her, and his exhausted face hardened into a mask of polite indifference. "You can rest easy, ma'am," he said, his voice flat. "No poor rancher to bother you now. See you soon." He was vanishing into the indifferent west, taking his silent, profound sacrifice with him. Her own arrogance was a shattered mirror. He wasn't poor. He was the wealthiest man she had ever known. A violent surge of desperate regret choked her. She couldn't let him go. She ran the last few steps. "Wait, Ben Cartwright." He turned, his gaze unyielding. "I called you poor," she choked, tears carving paths through the dust. "I was a fool, Ben. You gave everything you had for my girl. You are the richest man in the territory." She took a ragged breath, dropping her last shield. "I need a man who knows the difference between a cart and a human soul. I need a man to teach me what true worth is." She met his stunned gaze. "Will you marry me, Ben Cartwright?" The plea hung heavy, born of pure raw necessity. Ben saw past her arrogance to the terror and the desperate need. He didn't speak. He simply reached out and gently let the canvas sack of his past fall to the ground. The gesture was final. "I reckon I might just stay on here in the valley after all. But Emma," he added, his clear blue eyes finally meeting hers, steady and searching, "don't you go thinking I'm taking your charity, or that you're buying a foreman." He took a slow step towards her, closing the final dusty distance between their two worlds. "You asked me to stay, and you asked me to marry you. That's a promise, Emma, not a business arrangement. My name is the only price I'll ever take for the rest of this life." Emma's breath hitched, and a fresh wave of tears welled in her eyes, though this time they were tears of release. "Ben," she whispered, shaking her head, "it's the only price I want to pay. I want to build something real with you, on a foundation of truth. I'll take my Bar T, and you take my Ben Cartwright." The old arrogance was gone. There was only a simple, profound truth in her voice. We'll call it a new brand, a partnership, a dawn of mutual respect. The marriage took place 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony in the bar tea parlor, with only a few trusted workers and the doctor present. There were no lavish silks or gold ornaments, only the silent gravity of the vows and the shining hope in Lily's eyes.